A woman got pregnant in Texas. She wanted to get an abortion, but because she lived in Texas, she couldn't. So she decided to travel to the nearest state that could help her. She went to Colorado, where she got the abortion she needed. Meanwhile, her ex-partner, the one who impregnated her, learned of her plan to get an abortion, and he hired a powerful anti-abortion attorney known in particular as the architect behind Texas's Heartbeat Act, or Senate Bill 8, which encourages citizen vigilantism and bounty hunter-style enforcement of that state's abortion ban, giving anyone the power to file a civil suit against someone who, quote, aids or abets an abortion. So now, this man named Colin Davis and his attorney, Jonathan Mitchell, who wrote the Texas abortion bounty hunter law, are investigating this woman and the people around her, searching for a way to charge anyone involved. Now, to be clear, nothing about this woman's abortion was illegal. Traveling across state lines to obtain an abortion remains legal nationwide. There have been laws introduced and passed that target traveling for abortion, but none are currently in effect. Traveling for an abortion is not a crime, for the moment at least, anywhere in America. But attorney Jonathan Mitchell wrote in a letter that Mr. Davis plans to, quote, pursue wrongful death claims against anyone involved in the killing of his unborn child, end quote, according to the Washington Post. Now, in Texas, all abortions are banned except to save the life of the woman or to prevent severe injury. Doctors who are found to have broken that law can be put in prison for life and can face up to $100,000 in civil penalties. And while women seeking abortions for themselves cannot be charged under Texas law, anyone who, quote, aids or abets, end quotes, that abortion, including those who distribute abortion pills, can be sued in civil court for damages of $10,000 or more. Davis's lawyer said in a statement that abortions that occur outside of Texas can be targeted for civil litigation. Quote, fathers of aborted fetuses can sue for wrongful death in states with abortion bans, even if the abortion occurs out of state. They can sue anyone who paid for the abortion, anyone who aided or abetted the travel, and anyone involved in the manufacture or distribution of abortion drugs, end quote. The Center for Reproductive Rights, which is representing the woman who got an abortion in Colorado, has called that statement, quote, fear-mongering, emphasizing that women seeking abortions out of state should not be intimidated. Now Mr. Davis is attempting to depose his ex-partner who obtained the abortion, along with a handful of other people who may have been involved in her abortion. If deposed, this woman and others involved would have to provide all documentation relevant to the abortion, including abortion funds or any other entity that may have helped her. And now we wait to see what the Texas court decides. But this case highlights the landscape in which we exist. The woman in the case is likely in the minority because she was, in fact, able to leave state and get the abortion she was seeking. Millions of women live in places and under circumstances where an unwanted or unsafe pregnancy would end in forced birth. With Florida's now near total abortion ban in effect, the vast majority of pregnant people seeking abortions in the South have nowhere to go unless they have access to significant resources to support travel. And the doctors and health advocates who choose to continue to work under those anti-abortion regimes to do what little they are legally allowed to do to help women are doing so every day under threat of arrest and prosecution. Joining me now is Robin Marty, the executive director of the West Alabama Women's Center, the author of many important books, including a new handbook for a post-Roe America. Alabama has one of the strictest abortion bans in the nation, with no exceptions for rape or incest, and providers like Robin face felony charges and years in jail for providing abortion care. Robin, it's a tough introduction, but I appreciate, I have to talk the truth when you're on the show. Thanks for being here. Talk to me about this case in Texas, because it feels very similar to the kind of thing you've been telling me about as a danger of post-Roe America.
Yeah, it's good to be back, Allie. It is, in fact, what we've been waiting for. We knew that there would be cases where there would be frivolous lawsuits. And let's be clear, this is frivolous. There is no place where it is illegal to leave the state in order to get an abortion. But this is what we've been living under in Alabama, where we have been told that to provide any resources or even information about where legal abortion clinics are is considered a criminal conspiracy, and that we could all be under arrest for that. What that means right now is that we have thousands of patients in Alabama who are pregnant, who don't want to be pregnant, and don't know where they can go in order to get an abortion. And it is illegal for any person in Alabama to tell them where that nearest clinic is.
Yeah, let's parse that for a while, because it's kind of hard to believe in a country where we talk about the First Amendment that it's illegal to have that conversation. How does that translate? Is it illegal for you as a person who provides reproductive health and advice to do it? Is it illegal for me if somebody walks up to me in a coffee shop and says, I'm looking for an abortion, and I say, well, you're going to have to go to Virginia or D.C.? Like, for whom is it illegal, and how will that be tested?
So officially, according to what the Attorney General is saying, it is illegal for any person to provide anything that will help someone get an abortion outside of the state, because that abortion would be illegal in Alabama. His argument, which he has actually provided to the court, is that if it is illegal in Alabama, it is illegal for a person in Alabama to help someone obtain any sort of abortion outside of the state. For us, that means we cannot provide any information. Obviously, it would seem like somebody, a friend, an acquaintance could say, okay, well, actually, it turns out that there is a clinic in North Carolina you can go to. But now, after we've seen what happened in Texas, there's always the possibility that there could be some ex-partner, someone who is involved, who's like, okay, I'm going to get a lawyer and I'm just going to slap suit you in order to see what sort of information I can get to scare you out of doing anything again.
Tell us about what it's like across the South right now. There's a lot of talk about how to support the clinics in states where abortion is still legal to help them handle the influx of patients who are coming from states where abortion is now illegal. But what's happening to the folks who are living in anti-abortion states who can't get out? You described this to me in great detail right after the fall of Roe, and we've tried to sort of convey that to our viewers, that it's not an easy thing. There are the rules, the expenses, the costs, and the uncertainty around leaving your state to get an abortion make it difficult to impossible for a lot of women in Alabama.
So it's very, very complicated to try to get out of the state to get an abortion. And while it's great to be resourcing all of these places where people will go to, or where people can obtain pills and take medication on their own, the problem is in the South, we do not have safe places for people to go to if they have questions, if they want to see how pregnant they are before they take pills, if they want to make sure everything is okay after. All of the clinics down here, except for mine and 2 others, have closed, and there's no safe place for people to go to. This is where the action is happening. This is where the people are facing the most legal risks, and yet we are not being resourced in order to provide that care that is essentially the starting care for any person who's going to need an abortion outside of this area, or who wants to have an abortion inside this state, which allegedly is not illegal at this moment.
What has to happen for you to stay open?
I need about $50,000 right now in order to stay open for the next 4 months.
And people can donate directly to the West Alabama Women's Center?
Yes, we are a nonprofit, alrepro.com, and we have a place there to donate. $50,000 will keep us open for 4 more months.
4 more months. Robin, thanks for all you do. Thanks for making us a lot wiser about this tragic situation. Robin Marty is the executive director of the West Alabama Women's Center and the author of several important books, including a new handbook for a post-Roe America.